Welcome everyone to This Week in Svelte, episode 149. We are on the verge of 150, but for the next couple of weeks probably I will not be able to stream. So it will be a while before we reach 150, but I don't know, should we throw a party or something? Let's jump right into it because we're gonna go over the changelog right now, but later on Puru will join me to talk about his brand new project, and I'm excited to hear about it, so let's jump into the changelog. Starting from Svelte, which didn't have any release. If you can tell, like, they're working a lot on SvelteKit. Also, I mean, it's also August, so people are on vacation. So let's see, we have 3 new releases of SvelteKit. A lot of breaking changes. Oh gosh. Okay, oh gosh, that's a super huge release. They're working hard on SvelteKit, so let's go over this. Starting from SvelteKit 3.0. Next, 0.14. So, refresh all load function queries when clicking a link to the current URL. This is something that we discussed a bit because maybe it's not the most reasonable thing, but basically right now, if you click on a link that points to the same page, SvelteKit doesn't do anything, and right now instead it will refresh all load functions. So it's just like if you click back to the home page. Only include routes with a plus page or plus server in root ID. Okay, that's nice, because probably before it was also breaking require node 22.17, which we couldn't do before because Cloudflare was still not using 22.17, but now they are, so that's very nice. Preload code now takes a root ID instead of a path name. Root IDs are not prefixed with paths based. Okay, this is nice because I assume this will also mean that, no, I guess it will not load but you get more type safety, so it's nice. Remove deprecated .run method from live queries. Okay. Minor change, return the list of compressed files from builder.compress. So this is for builder is the adapter that we pass to adapters. So a builder is what allow basically the node adapter to add its own files, change the files that are already there, and builder.compress allow them to know which files are the compressed files, because for example in Node we pre-compress your files so that we can ship, the server can actually ship a compressed, a gzip or a broadly file instead of the whole file. And so now they can also know that. Add page and endpoint booleans, to up manifest routes and export a manifest route type. So this basically also means that from up manifest you can actually tell which is a page and which is an endpoint. Add page root ID and endpoint root ID to up types. So once again there is a split between page and endpoint. Generate valid path types for root with optional or rest params, several params in one segment, or escape sequence. Decode all numeric character reference. Sorry guys. Including above FFFF when crawling pre-rendered page. So basically if you add some numeric character after that it was failing at pre-render time in a root. I assume this is something like an emoji in a root. Chore, deduplicate request hashing for serialized fetch response. So if basically 2 responses to fetch responses that are serialized in the DOM, so whenever you make some server-side fetch request, the content is serialized and stored in the DOM so that you don't have to fetch it again. And oh gosh, I don't know why so much. But now, if they have the same hash, they are deduplicated, which is nice because you get less stuff in the DOM. Don't read object.prototype members as parameter during validation. Once again, like this is one of the weird thing about prototype in JavaScript, which is just an object, which means that sometimes you can actually like go over the prototype objects. Exclude roots without a page or endpoint from roots in app manifest and remove directory. I think we already read that. Reuse base64 and text encoding helper. Oh gosh. Record the MIME type of pre-rendered path in the server manifest. So now every pre-rendered path also has a MIME type in the manifest. So I assume it can be used to serve with the right MIME types. Only generate each root resolution module once when pre-rendering. Expand x plus nn and u plus nnnn. Escape sequence when resolving a root ID to a path name. So this is what I was talking before, like this FFFF. It's probably speaking of this. Allow roots to contain question like this and this via this and this escapes. Remove the dead SSR state.fallback field and name the server. I'm sorry, guys. Import resolved peer dependency as file URLs. So project relative resolution works on Windows. I hate Windows paths. Write generated tsconfig to node modules $up tsconfig.json so that tools with simplified tsconfig resolution can find it. So this is also nice. Basically, right now, before we were writing the tsconfig inside the .svelte kit folder. Now it's inside node modules, which means that it's automatically discovered. And so inside our tsconfig now there's just $up/tsconfig, which is also nicer to look. So there is a question here, so I'm gonna and it's what's this manifest that continues to pop up? Quite a while ago I needed, I don't know what you needed, but so the manifest is basically the collection of all the roots in your application. It is used to do like client-side routing and stuff like that. And now you also have it available. I'm sorry guys, today is like this, I'm tired. Now you also have have it available from $up/manifest. Stream promised read result lazily instead of eagerly buffering them. So read is this function from SvelteKit that allows you to read a file imported from Vite. So if you want, you can import some file, and Vite will actually resolve that to a URL or a data value. And with read, it's basically come on. It's basically a way to to tell, yeah, I'm using this thing. Like it's not just a string. I want the actual asset in there. Correctly decode u plus nn escape sequence above FFFF. And to answer your question, Lorenzo, will that be exposed? Yes, it's exactly exposed. So like you can just read from $up/manifest, I think. Okay, so that was it. Oh gosh, there's also a lot of other stuff here. Oh, that's a ginormous release. Come on. I think it's probably, 4 hours ago. So let's start with this, which is 3 hours ago, which is generate root resolution models as sibling of .html pages. That's it. And now let's actually talk about this, which is a lot of stuff. So Breaking, remove experimental handle rendering errors flag. So this is removed because you don't need it anymore. It was a flag before for 2.0. It is now not a flag anymore. Breaking, make get request and set response synchronously. So these are functions that you can use to get the current request, and those were asynchronous, but they don't need to be. So like now they are synchronous. This is kinda risky in the sense that if tomorrow we want to add a new feature to these things that requires them to be asynchronous, we can't do it in SvelteKit, but who knows. TypeScript 6 is now the minimum required version, which is good. Refresh all when clicking the link to the current URL. I'm pretty sure this is some sort of merge back, and it broke and added a bunch of stuff that wasn't needed. So upgrade cookie to v2. Cookie names must now contain only ASCII characters. Require nodes 22 or newer. Yeah, I feel like this is just like it wrongfully collected all. So isn't TS6 the go rewrite one? It is not. It is TypeScript 7 is the one that's native. TypeScript 6, it's kind of an in-between release of TypeScript that fixed a bunch of stuff for TypeScript 7 and made a bunch of breaking change for TypeScript 7, but 7 is the one that is using Go, basically. Okay. Remove the preload strategy option. Module preload will always be used. Default the cookie path option to /, which is nice because right now you have to always include it. Remove node polyfills. It's about time. Config kit output link header preload to preload using the link header. So link is something that you can return in your response, and the browser will start fetching these resources. Require Vite plugin Svelte version 7. Make page URL immutable. Yeah, we already read this, so those are just collected in the changelog, but those are not new in the release. I wonder if there is a way I can see what was actually released. Yeah, because this is just, let me do github.com, svelte.js, kit. Let's see. We should be able to see what actually got released. So we have package kit 4 hours ago. If we compare to next, should be next. Let me compare it with the one before. So at svelte.js /kit at, yeah, let's compare it with the one before. It is a lot of stuff. But I guess it's just those files. Yeah. So merge the server request state into one object. Pass function name to config. Bump Wrangler. This is the code, like the. This is the Cloudflare runtime. So now they allow like a new version of Node, and that's why we bumped it. Add exclude for service worker file. This is adding an exclude to the tsconfig so that the service worker is not included into the main tsconfig. Persist global up state across module graph reload. So this is in case you add a new module. So during HMR, it's persisting the global up state so that like if you have like page URL is not busted because there is a module graph reload. Support custom values in page.state via transport hook. So page.state, it's something that you can add when you do go-to and you can pass a state. It will store the state in like the navigation state. And now you can actually add custom values by using the transport hook. So it will be decoded using the transport hook. Mark request event properties as read-only so that you cannot touch it. Remove netlify pre-bundle step. Centralize transport stuff. So this basically is a way to like have one single place where all the transport is doing stuff. Use the peer imported Vite consistently. So Vite is a peer dependency of SvelteKit. Probably I should bump it a bit more. And it was probably not using the right version. Warn when tsconfig doesn't exclude service worker. So we saw that it was excluded, and if now it doesn't exclude it, so if you already had like another tsconfig that didn't exclude it, it's now warning you. Remove Svelte.js amp. I didn't knew it was a thing. I think AMP is something that Google created and we were supporting it, and it was something like it's basically like static websites, but it is deprecated, like Google AMP. Yeah, it's a web component framework that you can use to create websites, stories, email, and ads. And there was an adapter for this, but it is now deprecated. Update match parameters type. Detect app server import when Kit is installed inside the project. The project root. Okay, so probably like if in a monorepo Kit was installed in a project root, app server was not resolved correctly. Wait for navigation hook before reading the shallow routing. Requires SvelteKit peer dependency for remote modules in Node. Okay, this is something that was problematic because basically we are now transforming the modules, like the remote modules, inside Node modules. So you can technically ship a function, like a remote function library. And the issue is that every file that is named .remote.something, and we recently also changed so that you can call a remote file just remote.ts. So if you have remote.ts basically, or like I don't know, index.remote.ts inside a node modules, and that like that package is not meant to be for Kit, for SvelteKit, then we would try to transform it and break it. So this was happening to better out. Yeah, basically in better out. No, actually in Jose, which is a popular, it's a popular library to build JWT. They have a file that's named .remote, like that's named remote.ts, which is exporting this create remote JWK set, right? It's something specific to the authorization. The problem is that we were trying to transform it. We would see that it was not a remote function and error route. And so now to actually make your project work, it has to have a peer dependency on SvelteKit, which you would need anyway to build a library for remote functions. So yeah. Warn when naively proxying requests that result in responses with, this was also a super weird bug that I've encountered myself. So basically, this is a fun one to explore, but basically the problem is, let's say that you did something like this, like you want to return fetch from a get, like you want to build a proxy basically. Now the issue is that the moment you fetch something, if this something that you are fetching, it's encoded, it will have a like content encoding header, which right now is passed verbatim to the next, like to actually the release PR is broken as well. Really? Manuel, Manuel, it's one of the Svelte maintainers, and is saying that the release PR is broken as well. So it's not just the text. But yeah, regardless, what I was saying is that if you are trying to basically build a proxy, if this endpoint here has a content encoding, the moment you fetch, Node will actually decode the body. Even if you don't access the body, it will decode it, which means that now you are returning something from SvelteKit, which has a content encoding different from the content encoding of the content, because the content was decoded the moment you invoked fetch, but now the header has a content encoding, so when it reaches the browser, it tries to decode it, and it fails to decode it because it's not encoded. So if you take a look, I had some answer here because I had the same problem, and so my solution was to just delete the content encoding, and I guess you also need to delete you need to delete a couple of headers basically. Right now, the only thing that we do is that we warn you in case you are doing this kind of stuff, so that you can actually learn about what this madness is, because I spent like a whole day figuring it out. Deprecate builder.rimraf and builder.mcdirp. Those are, again, the builder is something that you are using inside the adapter. So yeah, update ts configs, revert chore remove dependency on chokidar, chore remove dependency on chokidar, nice. Remove worktop caching, I don't know what this is. Error when reading non-serialized set cookie headers in load function. Explains removed lib and service worker import. So right now, $sign libs and service worker are not are removed. I wonder what this does. Like, explain where. Where are they? Okay, so if you try to import them, since you don't have any alias anymore you don't have any alias in the, so before we were setting the aliases for you, and now we're not anymore. So if you try to import them, it will warn you and say, hey, you need to do this. Harden the autofix workflow. What's this? Oh, that's nice. I didn't know we had this. This thing here. Sorry, just give me a second. I need to answer this phone call. Sorry. I know. Sorry. Sorry, I had to take this call. Yeah, I think that was it in terms of releases for SvelteKit, obviously. So let's now go into Acorn TypeScript. Preserve parameters in generic async arrow function IST nodes. Isolate namespace variable scopes. Like this is the library that we use to parse TypeScript, basically. Parse decorators on declared and declared abstract classes. Decode Astral JSX numeric entities and ignore inherited entity table names. What? Parse JSX spread children as JSX spread children nodes. Allow static auto-accessor class field. Parse TypeScript expression beginning with this as yield arguments. Like, those are so absurd to me, but let's see. We have 2 new release of adapter auto. Convert resolved adapter path to a file URL before importing, so build works on Windows. So once again, this is probably something, requires SvelteKit 3. We have adapter Cloudflare, which is probably, avoiding caching immutable asset for a force. Use NodeFS instead of deprecating building remraf, building mcdirp. Bump Cloudflare worker types, avoid overriding user existing header rules. So you can have this header file that specifies how you want to redirect in your this Cloudflare worker, and it was overriding them when it needed to redirect it, and now it is not anymore. Check worker CI environment variable to determine if we are building for Cloudflare worker. Allow pre-release version of SvelteKit 3 to satisfy the period dependency range. Adapter netlify, use roll down for edge function bundling. Breaking write output that conform to the stable netlify framework API. Deploying and previewing with netlify CLI now requires version 17.31 or later. Requires SvelteKit 3, edge function build target is now ES 2022, require VIT 8, blah, blah, blah. So as you can see, like, there is a bunch of preparation for the new major of SvelteKit. And like this kind of trickles down to every adapter because we need to update variables and stuff like that. Yeah, it's basically kind of the same. Adapter static requires SvelteKit 3. Adapter Vercel match sibling.html root.js root resolution request. Okay. Use roll down for edge function bundling. Edge function is now ES 2022. Remove support for edge and node 20 runtimes. I think we saw this. Oh, I remember we already saw them. Enhanced image. Bump VIT image tools on V11. We have a breaking require node 22 or newer, require VIT, replace lib alias with hashtag lib in the docs, and bump VIT image tools to V11. New release of load config, don't double nest kit option when loading from a VIT config. 2 new releases of Svelte package, require node 22 or newer. Warn when using a server file inside a server directory without importing a server-only module. That's nice. Transform import aliases into relative importing files. This is also interesting because basically, since like if you are using like the hashtag lib and then building a package with it, before it worked, but now if you package something with an hashtag lib, it will refer to the import of the package importing a package, of the project importing the package. And so if you do like if I don't know, sorry. So if we didn't rewrote them, it would basically break when you create the project. So now we rewrote the imports during the process of packaging from Svelte for Svelte. Oh, sorry, my voice is tired. SV utils add SvelteKit 3 helpers, iskit 3 resolve lib prefix, lib subpath imports. New release of uslint config, update global to like this. New release of SV, replace MCP add-on with AI tools add-on, set up the Svelte plugin. So, oh, this is nice that was actually merged. So I didn't notice that it was merged. Sorry, Jean. So basically, before it was asking if you want to add the MCP. Now it's more general if you want to add AI tools. Run prettier directly instead of through the package manager, and stop allowing builds for packages that no longer have install script. SvelteKit next project now install build and type check $lib import instead of $lib. tsconfig extending $up tsconfig. Basically, there is a bunch of changes that we need to make to the basic template. To the basic template, and now the basic template has all these changes. Remove better SQLite 3 from allow builds. Bump better SQLite 3. I think better SQLite 3 recently did a release where it doesn't require a script anymore, but they also baked in like the whole client in Node modules, which is a bit like this. Better out, use the out CLI binary in the out schema script. And that's it. New release of Svelte check prevents silent error during startup caused by unhandled promise. One new release of dvalue. Export filter array indexes. The array index filtering used by indices of add pluggable operation option to parse and flatten, allowing customization of how values are constructed while reviving. Add pluggable operation option stringify async, allowing customization of how values are introspected during serialization. And finally, two new release of ESWrap. Preserve JavaScript grammar and module semantic along with TypeScript modifier and generic arguments. Respect the ES3 method flag when printing object properties whose values are function expression. So, like if it's a method, it needs to print an actual method because it's important if you are reading this, basically. Preserve definitive assignment assertion on variable declaration. Preserve character entities in JSX text. Don't drop new lines when indent is an empty string. Only print declare on ambient function declaration. Okay, these are just like annoying things. What is this? It's asking known me C8. So this is a library. It's called ESWrap, and it's a library that we use to convert a JavaScript syntax AST to JavaScript syntax to actual stringified code. So it's from AST to string, basically, which is also why it's called parse in reverse. All right, I think we have done this. So let me actually switch to the other scene, because now Puru, which is not, here it is. So Puru will join us. So I'll present a bit what Puru has built here. Just a second, and it's called Ojija, which it's a clever name because it's the island where Ulysses landed. And it's about island and lakes. So I'll leave the stage for Puru, so he can talk about his new library that brings SSR islands for SvelteKit to the game. Yes, Please, Puro.
All right. Thanks a lot, Paolo. Is my presentation visible?
Sorry?
Is my presentation visible?
Yes.
Good. Thanks. All right. So, hey everyone. Today I want to show you Ojigia, which is SSR Islands for SwellKit without patching SwellKit. And guess what? It has lakes. And Paolo needs a vacation, as he said. So, the basic promise is simple. The page can stay server rendered HTML, and only the components that genuinely need JavaScript have to receive it. That sounds like a small performance trick, but it changes how you build content heavy pages, partially interactive apps, and even pages that use Kit's remote functions. Yes, OGGR works with remote functions just like that. I'll start with a problem that pushed me into building this. Then we'll build up the mental model one piece at a time. Islands, lakes, deferred HTML, and the optional router. Once that foundation is clear, we'll get to the part I care about most, using real SwellKit remote functions inside those islands. And then I also have a one more thing moment at the very end, which uses remote functions in a very nice way. But before all of that, a very quick introduction. Hi, I'm Puru. I'll actually like to take a small second because it seems my slides are not visible. Give me just a second.
I do see your slides in the.
No, my control tab, it kind of shut down. The process is down, so just
Okay.
give me a second.
Yeah, no worry.
Then, yeah, this is a very weird one and very sudden.
No worries.
It should be visible. What do you see, Paolo? Is it the
Yeah,
first slide?
I do see the first slide.
The first slide. Okay, okay. So it's back on.
Yeah.
Sorry, everyone. So I'll come back to the introduction. Hi, I'm Puru. You can find me at puruvijay.dev or as puruvijaydev on Twitter. And yes, the cat is the official profile picture. At this point, it represents me more reliably than an actual headshot of a human. I'm a Svelte ambassador. I work with the Svelte team and I care perhaps a little too much about web performance. I spend a lot of time looking at what frameworks ship to the browser. OGGR came out of a very specific frustration. I like SwellKit. I love it. I wanted to keep its server rendering, its routing conventions, and the fantastic remote functions and async stuff. But on pages that were mostly content, I kept facing a binary choice: either boot the whole client app or get no component interactivity at all. I wanted a third answer, and that is the story of the stock. And it starts with the choice Git gives us today. Here's the choice I kept running into. When you have CSR set to true, SwellKit boots the client for the whole route. For a highly interactive applications like dashboards, that is usually exactly what you want. It's fantastic. But imagine a long documentation page with one search box, one chart, and one little counter component to show off your little library. The browser still receives the machinery for the whole route, even though almost everything on screen is just prose. So we can set CSR to false. Another page is beautifully simple server HTML. Normal links work. Forms is still post. But that little counter component we had, it just doesn't work anymore because there's no JavaScript to wake it up. And that is a gap. I did not want to leave Git for Astro, and I definitely do not want to maintain a fork of Git because islands. When you think about it, they use a lot of features which you would think would use a lot of patching to swell Kit. And guess what? I did not want that, and I managed to do it without that. So I'll get to that. And I want you to keep the server page and selectively wake up just a few components, just sprinkle interactivity. Once you say the problem that way, the design goal becomes quite clear. So this is the one sentence answer. Keep the page as server HTML and opt individual components into JavaScript. OGGR does that from outside. A Vite plugin understands which imports are islands. A small browser runtime wakes those regions up. And the server handle can fill signed HTML holes when you want part of a static page to arrive later, like server islands. SvelteKit itself remains unpatched. That last point matters throughout this talk, and I'm not trying to rebuild Kit beside Kit. If you want normal document navigation, you can keep it. If you want soft navigation, the router is optional. And when we reach remote functions, those are Kit's own remote primitives, not OGGR flavored replacement. I did not reinvent remote functions. I'm using the same ones. And that is a promise. Now let's turn it into a picture we can keep in our heads for the rest of the talk. That is the mental model I want you to carry from here. The large box is still a CSR false page. There's no client-side rendering from SvelteKit end. It arrived as complete server-ended HTML, and most of it will remain exactly like that. Inside the page are a few regions with different jobs. The counter wakes up immediately. The chart waits until it is visible. The greeting is different. Its HTML itself arrives later from the server. Under all three is one small runtime. It reads the region, waits for the right moment, and either imports that island's module or fetches the deferred HTML. Each interactive region carries its own entry URL, so adding another island adds that island's code, not another copy of the runtime. And if one island contains another one, the inner component simply joins the parent's interactive tree. Every island is under the hood is just a Svelte app. So the page remains the unit of HTML, while each region owns its own JavaScript decision. The next question is, what does that feel like to author? The authoring API is dead simple. You keep writing a normal Svelte import, and then you describe the boundary with an import attribute. Hydrate load says this component already has HTML and should wake up immediately. Hydrate visible says the same thing, but only once it reaches the viewport. Defer load says the component's HTML should come later, and the OGG of fallback snippet is what the audience sees while that happens. The project setup is three pieces. Put OGGR before SvelteKit in Vite, add OGGR handle to the server hooks, and add CSR equal to false on the routes that you want to convert. That can be one route at a time. It does not have to be the route layout.js. One route at a time is good. Nested layouts, good. Everything works. This is not an all at once migration. The marked import behaves like a real Svelte component binding, which we'll come back to. The one intentional limitation is dynamic imports with these attributes. OGGR fails those at build time very intentionally because allowing Vite to strip the metadata would produce a silent non-island. First, though, we need one shared vocabulary for when work begins. OGGR uses the same timing words in two different phases, which keeps the API easily learnable. Load means now. Idle means when the browser has breathing room. Visible means when the region reaches the viewport. And a media query lets the environment decide. And none is a special. The value of none, not any of these. No, we'll use that in a moment to make a lake. The word stays the same, but the job depends on the attribute. With hydrate, visible controls when JavaScript starts. With defer, it controls when the browser asks the server for HTML for filling up that hole. You can even combine the two, fetch the HTML on one schedule and then hydrate it on another. The runtime understands that these are two phases of the same region. If both phases say idle or visible, it does not make you wait twice. If hydration says load after a defer, it starts as soon as the new HTML arrives. Now that the timing is clear, we can look at what the marked import actually becomes. An island in OGGR is a component binding, not a special tag site. This is what makes it feel natural inside Svelte code. When I import A with hydrate load, The binding A becomes the island wrapper. I can render it directly, I can store it in a variable called active, or I can use it repeatedly in a list. Those are all normal Svelte patterns and they all keep working. The props are also normal Svelte props during server rendering. At the boundary, OGGR serializes the captured values with D values. So D value, which SvelteKit also uses, by the way, so the browser can reconstruct them. That is why functions, promises, or class instances cannot cross from the host page into an island. They are not portable data. They don't have a to JSON or a serialized deserialized inherently. Keep the behavior inside the island and pass serializable state in as props. For a given component path and strategy, the build creates one shared client entry. 1,000 instances reuse that module, while each instance still gets its own server HTML and props. That gives us a clean interactive boundary. But sometimes inside that boundary, we still want a large piece of HTML to remain completely asleep. This is what lakes are for. Think of Lake as a frozen patch of server HTML inside an otherwise interactive island. The outer region on the left has JavaScript, but the article body inside it is marked with hydrate none. So OGGL lifts the DOM out before the parent hydrates and restores it afterwards. The server still rendered the real content, but the Lake component's client JavaScript never ships. This can nest in a useful way. If the article contains a small widget that is marked as an island again, that widget gets its own boundary and wakes independently. So you can have an interactive shell, a large static body, and then another live component inside the body without turning the whole tree into JavaScript. The choices on the right matter when the lake reappears after a root change or conditional. Cache restores the HTML you already had. Yes, we cache the HTML as literally a string. We do that. SWR, stale while revalidate, restores it immediately and then revalidates it through the same signed server region mechanism we are about to see. Lake's answer, how do I keep HTML asleep inside an island? The mirror image question now is, how do I leave a hole in the page and render its HTML later? And that is a server island. Show a fallback now and then replace it with server rendered HTML later. If there is no hydrate attribute, that region never needs client JavaScript at all. The browser does not send arbitrary component name to a public renderer. The server creates a signed capability URL containing an opaque region ID, the serialized props, an expiry, and an HMAC signature. The runtime only fetches that same origin URL and the server verifies it before rendering. The returned scripts are inert. This is an HTML swap, not a script injection path. The practical use case is a mostly static page. You can pre-render the shell on into a CDN, leave a small personalized hole, and fill only that greeting or price or account summary at request time. One security note is worth saying plainly: the signature protects integrity, not secrecy. The URL is a bearer capability, so do not put secrets in the props. At this point, we can build rich pages with almost no client surface. The moment we want those pages to navigate like an app, we need one more optional layer, and that is the router. The router is deliberately optional. If you do nothing, links perform normal document navigation, and that is a perfectly complete OGGR application. For many content sites, I would keep it that way. If you add OGGR router to a layout, same origin links can become soft navigations. The router fetches the next document, merges the head, swaps the body, and uses view transitions by default. The persist key is how stable layout Chrome survives that swap. When the current and incoming documents share the same data OGGR persist key, OGGR keeps that DOM and islands inside it remain mounted, not a mountain, sorry. If the key disappears on either side, the region remounts. There is one distinction here that will become crucial in a minute. A hard navigation changes the whole document body. A soft invalidation only refetches the current URL and refreshes its data seeds in place. It does not remount the islands. Why make that distinction so carefully? Because a real application does more than click counters. It reads from the server, submits forms, invalidates data. That's where the project nearly becomes a toy or it becomes very, very useful. So far, we have built a convincing islands demo. We can bake a counter, freeze a lake, defer some HTML, and navigate without reloading the whole page. But this was a point where I had to ask whether OGGR was actually useful. Real interfaces, they need server data, they need queries, commands, form, validation, invalidation, yada yada. Progressive enhancement. If an island needs a second OGGR specific RPC system to do that, then I have to split the application in two and I have made the architecture worse. The better answer was much harder but much cleaner. Make SvelteKit's own remote functions run inside the island graph, even though the full Kit client page never boots. That is the second half of the story. Everything we have covered so far is the foundation that makes this part possible. It helps to separate the data flow into two directions. Data that the server already knows can enter an island as serializable props. For richer interaction going back to the server, the island can import Kit's own remote functions, query, command, form, live query, batch, and pre-render. OGGR reuses Kit's wire codec and client runtime rather than inventing a parallel protocol. That means the transport hook still applies, custom types still serialize the Kit rate, and file arguments still behave as expected. The progressive enhancement story also survives, with JavaScript off, a remote form posts natively to Kit's endpoint. Once the island hydrates, the same form gains enhanced submission, pending state, fields, and issues. On the first render, queries run in process on the server. OGGR places the responses into the document so the island can adopt the data that is already painted inside or flashing back to a pending state. To see that works without booting the whole Kit app, let's walk through the pieces around a single island. So let's talk about it. The middle column is the interactive island. Inside it, the application imports the familiar Kit primitives: query, form, command, and live query. The left column is what lets that island begin from the server rendered state. One document level seed carries the current page data. Another carries remote function responses collected during SSR. The browser applies those seeds before the island starts, so $app/state and the remote cache already agree with HTML on the screen. The right column remains Kit's endpoint. Form and command posts keep Kit's CSRF rules and transport behavior. OGGR is only providing the isolated client environment around them. The environment uses narrow $app/star shims for island imports because under CSR equal to false, there is no Kit client page to provide those modules. The shims expose the current page snapshot and navigation hooks without pretending that the full router is running. When a form succeeds, Kit normally calls invalidate all. That sounds simple, but in an island's architecture, the exact meaning of invalidation decides whether the UI stays alive or it gets torn down. I'm going to have a simple sip of water from my giant island themed water. All right, too much islands. Let's move on to the next one. OGGR treats invalidate all as a soft refresh, not as a navigation. It throws away the cached HTML for the current URL, fetches a fresh copy, merges the head, and reapplies the page and remote function seeds. The body stays where it is, so every mounted island keeps its local state. Just as importantly, soft invalidation does not pretend that navigation happened. There's no body swap, no view transition, no remount, and no before navigate or after navigate cycle. Live query instances are not cleared either. There is one boundary to understand. Refreshing the document seed does not automatically update an already mounted live query object. For single flight form updates, Kit already has a more precise mechanism, which is what we look at next. Here is the precise pattern for submit this form and return the fresh query value in the same response. On the island, submit dot updates entries, that's a mouthful to say, tells Git which query keys should be refreshed and skip the broad invalidate all. On the server, requested get entries dot refresh all sees those keys, recomputes the query, and includes a new result in the form response. The mounted query object can then update its current value immediately. When I say the query object, remote functions are essentially a query class internally that maintain all the states. So that's the thing that I'm talking about. It's internal. Both sides are necessary. Updates by itself only sends a request for fresh keys. If the server never calls requested, the response has no refresh query payload and the live value remains stale. A soft invalidation does something different. It refreshes the document seeds, not that mounted query instances. This is the pattern used by the guestbook in the OGGR playground. You submit, the list updates in the same flight, and the island never remounts. That closes the loop. We started with a mostly static page, and we now have a selective JavaScript that can still use Git's real data model. So the final question is not, can this work? It is, when is this the right trade? Ojigia is a good fit when the page is mostly HTML and interactivity is the exception. That could be a marketing site with a few live widgets, documentation with search and playgrounds, or an application cell that still needs Git loads, forms, and remote function. It also fits the CDN static case we saw earlier, where deferred regions add request time personalization to a pre-rendered page. I'm going to take one more sip from my island themed bottle. Adoption can be gradual. A route can move to CSR equal to false when it is ready, while other routes they continue using the normal Git client. The optional router knows to stay out of the way on those CSR equal to true pages. But if almost every component in your product is interactive and the whole route should hydrate, please just use Svelte as designed. OGGR is not a cheaper way to rebuild a fully client rendered app. It is a way to preserve HTML as a default and spend JavaScript deliberately. This is the whole story of OGGR itself. Start with server HTML, wake only the regions that need it, keep static content asleep even inside them, defer HTML when useful, and still speak Git when the island talks back to the server. Or at least that's what the whole story, or at least that was the whole story, until the same experiment made one more missing piece impossible to ignore. I said that was the whole story, and there's the one piece. Once Ojichia made CSR equal to false, Swellkit page feel this close to an Astro page. The next missing piece becomes very obvious: content collections. So this is OGGR slash content. It is not a release library yet, and it is intentionally not bundled into OGGR. You install it separately because these are two different decisions. OGGR decides where JavaScript runs. The content package decides how files or CMS entries become application data. The important part is that it does not introduce another data framework. It is built directly out of remote functions we just spent time understanding. That keeps content inside the same SvelteKit application model instead of bolting an astro-shaped island on the side. Let me show you the whole API on just one slide. A bit of a teaser, you could say. The content handle stays private inside a .remote.ts file. You give it a source, an explicit format, and a schema. The source can be Markdown, or it could be MD Swex from import.meta.glob. It could be JSON or YAML or a one-time CMS fetch or even a stream that keeps pushing new entries. Yes, it could be like a live chatbot where you are receiving the data. Then .list and .get mint real kit remotes. Static files naturally become pre-rendered remotes with generated inputs, and async CMS can use query. A streaming source can become query.live. The page never imports a catalog or the file system. It imports only the remotes and calls them like the rest of the app. And the experiment goes one step further. An MD Swex entry can contain OGGR island of its own. The the content remote server renders that entry to HTML. The page inserts it with the HTML, the at HTML thing where you inject things in it. And the OGG region boundaries, they survive and they are hydrated whenever needed. So, a Markdown article can contain a hydrated counter or a deferred server region without turning the entire article into a client app. This works very beautifully with the inbuilt Shiki integration also. If you know Shiki, the syntax highlighter is in megabytes. Well, guess what? If you are pre-rendering your content, you never pay for that. It's rendered once on pre-render and then never ever touched again. For content heavy sites, this is the point where SvelteKit plus Ojigia can replace Astro while staying deeply integrated with Kit. One router when you want it, one remote functions model, one schema boundary, and islands all the way through the content. But it remains opt in. Install it only when you want the content layer. So it is not on NPM yet, it is just a teaser. It's going to be released soon. If you want to try it, the one address to remember is oggr.puruvijay.dev. The docs cover installation, every timing strategy, lakes, server regions, the router, and the remote functions setup. The playground includes the pieces I cannot demonstrate properly inside this slider deck, especially the guestbook flow, router behavior, and the different hydration schedules. The package name on NPM is simply Ogigia, and the source is on GitHub under Puru Vijay, which is my username. It is a mighty license. At Ogigia/content is still a preview in that repository, so please do not go looking for a published package just yet. It's going to take a while. The project is still moving, so if the deck and the docs ever disagree, trust the docs over the current package. I'll leave these links up for a moment. Then I would love to hear where this model feels useful, where it feels suspicious, or which boundary you want to pull apart. Thank you. I'm happy to go deeper on any part of the path we just walked, how the signed differ boundary works, how lakes survive hydration, what happens to live queries across soft navigation, or how the OGG router coexists with ordinary CSR equal to true kit routes. And please challenge the design. If one of these boundaries feel wrong or you think it already provides a cleaner path, that is a much more interesting conversation than a polite question. If we need a place to start, ask me about the difference between soft invalidation and the updates plus requested pair. They sound similar, but they refresh two different kinds of state. And that distinction is one of the most useful lessons that I got from building this. The docs are at oggr.puruvijay.dev. Thanks again. Over to you, Paolo.
Thank you. Thank you for. Can you hear me right? Yeah. Thank you
Yeah,
for
sure.
showing us this. I think like it's a very interesting. Like in general, like I know, Rich is not the most like fond of island. I built something similar like way back, just like as an experiment, and I never actually went ahead and built the full thing. So I'm happy that someone else did it because I think
Yeah.
like for content heavy website, it like this is absolutely useful, and I think it's even better. Like for example, Stanislav also built Mochi.dev, which also uses islands. But if you want to stay inside the SvelteKit ecosystem, I think this is a very good. I'm excited to try because, and I will probably report some bug. I'm sure. I will find
Please
a
do.
way to. I will find a way to break it. So, but yeah, I'm excited to try. I also very excited that like this looks very integrated with SvelteKit, and like you have thought about various aspects of the whole thing. So, and I guess like this is probably one of the like when we were thinking about remote function and async svelte, like this is a prime example of where it really benefits from that, right? So like the fact that you can just fetch data in your component, it's a game changer for like a library like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not going to lie, if we did not have remote functions, this just would not be possible. Remote functions are what make it possible in the first place
Yeah,
at such a good API design. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, like I don't even think like remote functions obviously like are super cool and all, but like I think like the real game changer is actually async svelte because I when I built my like POC of Server Island, and by the way, for me it was just actually Server Island, like it was not um, it was like not really an island architecture. But for me, when I built that, my main like one of the issue was how do I allow people to load data from their components. And I came up with like a load function exported from the module of the Svelte component, because I didn't have a sync Svelte. But with a sync Svelte, you can just fetch data in your component, which is so nice. And it's also something that
Precisely.
I I've experienced a bit working on the custom renderers, because like when you build a custom renderer, it's kind of the same thing, right? Like you still need a way to fetch data for like in a TUI, for example. And the fact that I don't have to think about how to do it because it's just built in into Svelte, it's so nice.
I know.
All right. If there's any question, drop them in chat. Otherwise, thank you very much, Puru, and let's see if like some question come up. Otherwise, thank you for presenting this. Thank you for building this, and I'll definitely give it a try.
Absolutely, Paolo. Thank you for giving me a stage to present my project. Thanks.
Sorry. So I don't know if there are any questions because I just like it. My like live chat broke inside my OBS, but now I see that there's no questions. So thank you very much, Puru, once again. Thank you everybody for joining today's episode of This Week in Svelte. And next 2 Fridays I will probably not be here because I'm on vacation. So I might be able to join anyway. We'll see. We'll see. Like, prepare for a ping in case. Otherwise, I'll see you in probably the week after. I'll see. Thank you very much. Thank you, Puru, for joining me. Thank you guys for watching.
Thanks so much, everyone. Bye.